Hello, this is Rayne Wu, and welcome to another episode of Wind Down Wednesday. This week, I am super excited to have my guest here, Dave. I know you're not a wine guy,
Yeah.
but I know that you enjoy drinking beer.
Yes.
So maybe to start, you can just tell us about a great beer that you would like to recommend or that you've had recently.
Yes. So I love traveling to Asheville, North Carolina. I'm also building a house up there. And there's a brewery called Burial up there. And they do New England IPAs. And actually everything that they make within that New England IPA is phenomenal.
Awesome. And can you actually buy their beers here?
No.
You can't. Oh, so we have to go to Asheville.
You have to go to Asheville. But I travel there a lot, so if you want some beer, I can bring some back.
Okay, so make sure Dave is going to give his phone number at the end. If you want beer, you heard it from our guest himself. He will get you some beer from Asheville.
1 case per person, please.
Oh my gosh, I think I got to ask for that case first because I love New England IPAs, and having gone to school in Boston.
Oh, that's awesome.
That would be awesome. Well, what I wanted to do though is kind of make the transition, because you remember from the last episode of Wind Down Wednesday, we talked a little bit about the PCS process and about VA loans. Maybe just as an introduction, if you can help us understand, Dave, kind of your connection with the military, because I think that would be important for our audience to get to know you a little bit better as a loan officer.
Of course. Yeah, so in my regular job, I'm a senior vice president at the Federal Savings Bank, where I specialize in working with military members across the country, utilizing their VA home loan benefits. But I'm also been in the military for the last 12 years.
Wow.
So went of traditional forces to special operations, and just recently came off a deployment in December of last year, where I was overseas for 6 months. So that's why I love the passion for the military, just because I know the struggles that military members face, families face. I mean, I was overseas and bought a property. That was a process in itself. Like, you help people, but until you kind of do it yourself, like, I get what's happening.
Yeah, well, that's great to know. I didn't know about your extensive past in the military.
Yeah.
So, definitely I think you can relate to a lot of the military customers and clients that we're very fortunate, I think, to come across here in Northern Virginia. I actually heard, I think there's like 48 bases.
There's over 1.3 million veterans around the area.
Wow. I believe this is probably the largest market for the military in the United States. And I know that the PCS season has started again.
Yes.
And people are starting to make their transition to new bases here. So we're super excited about working with veterans. So if you are a veteran that's PCSing to Northern Virginia, definitely feel free to contact me or Dave, because I think one of the first steps in the process is really to, like a traditional loan, to get pre-approved for a VA loan. And maybe you can help us understand, Dave, what's the difference between a traditional conventional loan versus a VA loan? What are some of the advantages of a VA loan?
And that's a good question, because a lot of times people will debate, like, they might have down payment. Should I use a conventional loan, FHA, or even a VA loan, right? So one of the nice things about the VA home loan, especially if you don't have a VA home loan, or you're going to be selling a home before you buy a new property in this market, is there's no limit on what you can purchase with the VA home loan as long as you qualify. So for an example, if you want to buy $1 million home, there's no down payment requirement like there used to be a couple years ago. So that's the one nice thing about that. And then another thing is that affordable housing these days is kind of like condominiums. One thing that the VA changed the other year is that now any condo can be VA approved, no matter if it's denied or not approved. Like, if we go through the approval process, it gets denied, you can get a waiver submitted and buy a condo.
Wow, that's great to know. Because I think, as you've mentioned, one of the key advantages of having that 0% down is really key in terms of affordability.
Yep.
And I know for a lot of our buyers, as mortgage rates have gone up, their purchasing power has gone down. And it's also just a struggle sometimes to come up with that down payment.
Right. Plus, you have closing costs on top of that. So you still have that to factor in. And sometimes people don't factor that in, right? So that's one of the nice things with the VA home loan. Plus, you're not paying private mortgage insurance. So that additional couple $100 a month you would typically pay, plus the down payment, you're not paying for that. Because private mortgage insurance, I'm not an accountant or CPA, but you can't write that off for your taxes, right? But you can write off interest. So, like, that's the nice part.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe just to help our audience better understand as well, is in terms of eligibility and how do you qualify? Obviously, you have to have served in the military. I think different requirements for during wartime versus during peacetime. But can you talk a little bit about the qualification eligibility and the certificate of eligibility?
So when it comes to the certificate of eligibility, you have different. Also, people that are coming here are either active duty, right, or they're in the Guard or Reserve coming here for a deployment per se, so they can put their time in. So if you're on active duty, it's 6 months being in the service, you're already eligible. If you're out of the service, then it's 24 months. You have to have been served and honorably discharged. Or if you got out of the military with a service-connected disability, even though it might have been a couple months in, then you're still eligible for your benefits for the VA home loan, which a lot of people don't realize because they think like, oh, I have to be in this time-wise. Well, it's circumstantial.
Right.
But if you've been in for more than 6 months, you're good to go on active duty.
Okay, and that's good to know. And are there kind of forms that they need or approvals from their superiors?
So it depends. What we do from the lending side is when we request a certificate of eligibility, we go through the VA. Now, majority of the time, those certificate of eligibilities come back automatically. That was a good question because sometimes what we have to do is we have to get their chain of command involved to write a statement of service to verify how long they've been in. Now, let's say if you're in the Guard or Reserve, we might need a DD-214, even though you're still in. Every time you go on orders, right, on Title 10 and certain Title 32 orders, then you get a DD-214 every time. So sometimes we'll collect a couple of them, and then we submit that, and then the VA issues it. Now, the important thing to know is that you do need that document in order to order an appraisal, right? So sometimes what people will do, or lenders won't request these documents, and they get under contract, and you know how it is around here.
Sure.
Like, it's got to be pretty quick
Yeah,
to close.
definitely.
Right? So, like, everything has to be lined up. So if they don't order that, and then there's a delay, that can cause an issue. And depending on what branch of service you're in, which I learned this a couple years ago, is that, like, let's say, for example, and it's any branch, but like for the Marine Corps, it could take 6 months to get a DD-214 to prove that you are eligible for your VA home loan. And even if you've had a certificate of eligibility in the past and used the VA home loan, the VA can still come back and ask for that document again. So make sure you have a DD-214, or if you're on active duty or in the Guard or Reserve, that you have the ability to get a certificate of eligibility with your chain of command.
Like what I'm hearing, Dave, is that one, get this DD-214 early and ask for it early so you can get it ahead of time. So that's really good to know. Do you have any other kind of more closing remarks or tips that you would give for people that have never purchased anything through a VA loan? Some people think that, oh, it's more complicated, it takes longer. Well, what are some tips that you would give for a veteran or someone that's served in terms of, getting the VA loan? Obviously, to call you first.
Right. And that's the thing is, like, knowing what you qualify for and knowing how the benefit works today and in the future is important because you're going to understand how to make those decisions today that are going to affect you. A lot of people don't realize, like, VA loans don't have debt-to-income ratio requirements. They have residual, which can be dangerous because you can have a 70% debt-to-income ratio and qualify. So really understanding your budget, right? That's very important. Understanding how much things are going to cost so you're not putting yourself or your family in a bind. Understanding how much BAH you're going to be receiving for the area. And are you okay with going over that dollar amount, right? Do you have dual incomes? So we factor all of that in and go over that together just to make sure, like, this is going to be solid and sound decision that they're making. And then once we go over the entire process, then we go say, hey, let's set you up on a mobile app so you can generate pre-approvals, and then you're off onto the hunt looking at properties. Another big thing I think from the real estate side too is that, like, what we do with clients is we have agents CC us. So when they make offers on a property, we're calling them right away. It's a very competitive market. Right? No matter what you've heard, it's still like, if you were listing a property, you would want someone to reach out to you first and say, hey, this client is qualified, everything is completed, we have everything to ensure a smooth transaction.
Yeah, well, that's great to know. And I think what I've learned as I've started to work with veterans and talk to people like you, it's that, one, it's an honor for us to serve our veterans, but it's also great to have the backing of the VA for these loans that are given out for these veterans that are serving our country. So I just want to thank you for coming on board, Dave, and as our guest. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. You can reach me at 703-216-2692. And Dave, I don't know if you want to share your contact info.
Yeah, my number is 202-875-1010.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. Stay tuned for another episode of Wine Down Wednesday. We promise we'll have some wine recommendations next time. But thank you, Dave, for the beer recommendation. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody.